Hope you're doing phenomenal today. Happy Monday. Hope you all are ready to relax and read. What's up, Matt Gooch? What's up, New Zealand fam? I hope you're doing well. Sorry to have my hand right up in everybody's face. I got caught up at work again. It was literally like 15 minutes ago. So instead of taking time to further extend the stream out to pull everything out and have my dad relocate, I figured one more time from this spot. And this chair is quite nice. I'm not gonna lie. So I really like how my back feels with it. So Claire C, it's good to see you. Sean Bowden, hello, welcome. Rich boy, super appreciate you. I know you said that you're sleeping. So yeah, wish I was you. Yeah, it's definitely something I've decided. I know that it's kind of late for everybody, but going on late is kind of my only option, unless I were to do like really early morning. But in my time zone, I work from like 10:30 to 7:30 or 9, depending on the day. I try to get off early when I have my streams, but it doesn't always happen. I do just want to forewarn everybody that in about, I would say, 20 to 30 minutes, uh, Papa Ghost is going to come through this door. So I hope it doesn't alarm anybody, but that's just my dad coming home. He went to go get some dinner for after stream. Alec Longoria, how are you doing tonight, my friend? Can everybody hear me okay as well? Is the mic working okay? Got the light on, so I think it's working okay. But I'm just doing some basic upkeep as I do. It's more of a nervous habit than anything. Big Island Angler, what's up, brother? It is good to see you. Hear you fine. Appreciate you, Sean Bowden. Don Mount, it's good to see you, Don. Can hear you well. Excellent. You are fine. Appreciate it. So tonight we are going to get back into the Book of Dragons. We're going to finish it up. There's only one more story left. And then it's really kind of up in the air because I know that we had left off on book number 7 in The Wizard of Oz. And I know I said I was going to finish that entire series, and I definitely still plan to. So we can jump into book number 7 of The Wizard of Oz, or we can always view the Brothers Grimm adventures and see if we can have a story from the Brothers Grimm or Hans Christian Andersen. We have so many stories that we can get into. Yes, Katrina, I hope you are recovering well. And it is really good to see you all. Officially back in Mountain Time. Let's go, Sean Bowden. I hope the trip went well for you. You too. Excellent. Got 4 peeps in already. 10 likes on the stream. Let's go. Really appreciate anybody that wants to come hang out and potentially fall asleep, because I know that Monday streams are typically the ones people will come into solely to fall asleep, and that's okay with me. Doing a little better today. I am so happy to hear it. So happy to hear it. You are definitely in our thoughts all the time, Katrina. Jesse, it's good to see you. I hope you're doing well. I'm really excited to work on your art card. I was the 10th. You were the 10th. Excellent. Let's go. Went well, but it was exhausting. I'm still. I don't blame you even a little bit. If at any time at all you got to bounce, Sean, you just let me know. I understand fully. And Jesse, how was your day? "31-hour drive done in about 2 days." Lori, it's good to see you. Hans Christian Andersen has a way with words, very Eloquent. I agree. I agree. Story got a little crazy because I think he was the one that wrote the Big Claws, Little Claws story that we read and just had everybody just rolling on the floor laughing. Had a good day. How was your day, Mr. Pokey Ghost? It was good. My day was good. It wasn't like spectacular by any means, but it was definitely a good day. Nothing too out of the ordinary. Plus, there's always that moment during the day where it's like, oh, it's Monday, and I am thoroughly convinced that Monday is my favorite day of the week. And I think that's because it's the longest possible time before another Monday. And so it just kind of, as long as we have to do Monday, we might as well enjoy it. But then you all gave me something to look forward to on Mondays. And I believe this is probably our good, like, 40th reading stream now between the holidays and the regular. So, yeah, you all have given me something to look forward to every Monday. And there's always that moment during the day where I'm like, I get to read tonight. And so I thank you all for that. Yes, yes, I know. I'm the only person to like Monday. Disney based a lot of the stories off the Brothers Grimm stories. Not the same way Disney, and yep, that is true. That is true. So there will be plenty of disclaimers if we do get into those stories that some of them are definitely not Disney. I can tell you that. Uncle Brangus, how are you doing tonight, my friend? I hope you're doing well. Hope you're feeling good. Hope your Monday was everything you set out to get. I think I like Tuesday because it's the start of the week, but not the very start of it. Uh, I'm used to the week, if that makes sense, so I can still look forward to it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Although I will say that Monday needs to be itself because these Tuesday feeling Mondays or these Monday feeling Tuesdays and Wednesday feels like Monday. It's like Monday just has to be itself. Hello, Uncle Brangus from Leighton, Layla, and Nana. Getting better. Been 2 weeks of dealing with jaw pain, starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Excellent. Let's go. I'm glad you're starting to see that light. Yeah, and we need that extra. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get these opened up here. We are for sure going to finish the Book of Dragons. We just have one little story left to go. And then we'll kind of feel it out. We'll take a poll. We'll see if we want to jump back into the Wizard of Oz series, which we ended on book 7. Out of, I believe, there's 15 books, so we certainly have made it towards the halfway point. Sorry, I failed you yesterday. No, no worries at all. It's failed me? Oh, the thought? No, don't even worry about it, Matt. So I did want to take a second and give a huge shout out to Mr. Matt Gooch as well as Mr. ALB Trading. So Matt worked his magic, and yesterday I was in ALB's stream and I heard my name brought up. So I turned it up a little bit, and he said, we're gonna do a comment bomb on my channel. And of course, I hadn't asked him to do that, and Matt was working his magic, and I saw my name in a bunch of discords telling him to come and sub up to me, and I've certainly jumped up in my sub goal, but I am only 32 more, 32 left. So that's pretty impressive, Matt. I absolutely appreciate you and everything that you do. So thank you. Only 976. So that would be 24 more. Oh, I got 32 more than I did last. Yes, yes. You're all right, Matt. I really appreciate the effort. He said that he was going to get me to 1,000 before he went to sleep, but he absolutely not necessary, Matt. You did more than enough and always do more than enough for me in this channel. So really, really appreciate you. Smash the likes. I appreciate you, One Thug. All right, let's get into it. We're going to finish the Book of Dragons. And of course, there's only 8 stories, so this is book 8. Get Rips to 1,000. You got Rips to 1,000 tonight? Let's go. Anna's doing a little better today and has a doctor's appointment on Friday, Thursday. Get the sorted out. Yeah, definitely. I hope everything goes well, Katrina. Please keep us posted on everything. And thank you, children, for helping your Nana. So our options: Wizard of Oz, Hans Christian Andersen, or the Brothers Grimm. And we can always have a. Should we do that before we get going? No, we'll make the poll after the story here. Well, no, that wouldn't make any sense, would it? Because then that would just take a little bit longer. Bear with me, y'all. I had to have my camera set up right here, so. Sorry, I'm sure I'm shaking the camera. Oops. That would happen, wouldn't it? Or Brothers Grimm. There we go. All right, we'll leave that up while I read the first story. And once again, super appreciate everybody being here, smashing the like. Got 15 likes already, 9 peeps in. Please enjoy with us this last story in the Book of Dragons by Edith Nesbit. This one is chapter 8, called Kind Little Edmund, or The Caves in the Cockatrice. Edmund was a boy. The people who did not like him said that he was most tiresome boy that ever lived. But his grandmother and his other friends said that he had an inquiring mind, and his granny often added that he was the best of boys. But she was very kind and very old. Edmund loved to find out about things. Perhaps you will think that in that case, he was constant in his attendance at school, since there, if anywhere, we may learn whatever there is to be learned. But Edmund did not want to learn things. He wanted to find things out, which is quite different. His inquiring mind led him to take clocks to pieces to see what made them go, to take locks off doors to see what made them stick. It was Edmund who cut open an India rubber ball to see what made it bounce, and he never did it any more than you did when you tried the same experiment. Edmund lived with his grandmother. She loved him very much in spite of his inquiring mind, and hardly scolded him at all when he frizzled up her tortoiseshell comb in his anxiety to find out whether it was made of real tortoiseshell or something that would burn. Edmund went to school, of course, now and then, and sometimes he could not prevent himself from learning something, but he never did it on purpose. "It is such a waste of time," he said. "They only know what everybody knows. I want to find things out that nobody has thought of but me." "I don't think you're likely to find out anything that none of the wise men in the whole world have thought of all these 1,000 years," said Granny. But Edmund did not agree with her. He played truant whenever he could, for he was a kind-hearted boy, and could not bear to think of a master's time and laboring being thrown away on a boy like himself, who did not wish to learn, only to find out. When there were so many worthy lads thirsting for instruction in geography and history and reading and ciphering and Mr. Smile's self-help, other boys played truant too. Of course, in these went nutting or blackberrying or wild plum gathering, but Edmund never went to the side of town where the green woods and hedges grew. He always went up the mountain where the great rocks were and the tall, dark pine trees, and where other people were afraid to go because of the strange noises that came out of the caves. Edmund was not afraid of these noises, though they were very strange and terrible. He wanted to find out what made them. One day he did. He had invented, all by himself, a very ingenious and new kind of lantern, made with a turnip and tumbler, and when he took the candle out of Granny's bedroom candlesticks to put it in, it gave quite a splendid light. He had to go to school the next day, and he was caned for being absent without leave, although he very straightforwardly explained that he had been too busy making the lantern to have time to come to school. But the day after, he got up very early and took the lunch Granny had already made to take to school. 2 boiled eggs and an apple turnover. And he took his lantern and went off as straight as a dart to the mountains to explore the caves. The caves were very dark, but his lantern lighted them up beautifully, and they were almost interesting caves, with stalactites and stalagmites and fossils and all the things you read about in the instructive books for the young. But Edmund did not care for any of these things. Just then, he wanted to find out what made the noises that people were afraid of, and there was nothing in the caves to tell him. Presently he sat down in the biggest cave and listened very carefully, and it seemed to him that he could distinguish 3 different sorts of noises. There was a heavy rumbling sound, like a very large old gentleman asleep after dinner, and there was a smaller sort of rumbling going on at the same time, and there was a sort of crowing, clucking sound, such as a chicken might make if it happened to be as big as a haystack. "It seems to me," said Edmund to himself, "that the clucking is nearer than the others." So he started up again and explored the caves once more. He found out nothing. But about halfway up the wall of the cave he saw a hole, and being a boy he climbed up to it and crept in. And it was the entrance to a rocky passage. And now the clucking sounded more plainly than before, and he could hardly hear the rumbling at all. "I am going to find out something at last," said Edmund, and he went on. The passage wound and twisted and twisted and turned and wound, but Edmund kept on. "My lantern's burning better and better," he said presently. But the next minute he saw that all the light did not come from his lantern. It was a pale yellow light, and it shone down the passage far ahead of him, though through what looked like a chink in a door. "I expect it's the fire in the middle of the earth," said Edmund, who had not been able to help learning about that in school. But quite suddenly the fire ahead gave a pale flicker and went down, and the clucking ceased. The next moment Edmund turned a corner and found himself in front of a rocky door. The door was ajar. He went in, and there was a round cave, like the dome of St. Paul's. In the middle of the cave was a hole like a very big hand-washing basin. In the middle of the basin Edmund saw a large, pale person sitting. This person had a man's face and a griffin's body, and big feathery wings, and a snake's tail, and a cock's comb and neck feathers. "Whatever are you?" said Edmund. "I'm a poor starving cockatrice," answered the pale person in a very faint voice, "and I shall die, oh, I know I shall. My fire's gone out. I can't think of how it happened. I must have been asleep. I have to stir it 7 times round with my tail once in 100 years to keep it alight, and my watch must have been wrong, and now I shall die." I think I have said before what kind-hearted boy Edmund was. "Cheer up," he said. "I'll light your fire for you." And off he went. And in a few minutes he came back with a great armful of sticks from pine trees outside. And with these, and a lesson book or 2 that he had forgotten to lose before, and which, quite by an oversight, were safe in his pocket, he lit a fire all around the cockatrice. The wood blazed up, and presently something in the basin caught fire, and Edmund saw that it was a sort of liquid that burned like the brandy in a snapdragon. And now the cockatrice stirred with its tail and flapped his wings in it, so that some of it splashed out on Edmund's hand and burnt it rather badly. But the cockatrice grew red and strong and happy, and its comb grew scarlet and its feathers glossy, and it lifted itself up and crowed, "Cockatrice-a-doodle," very loud and clearly. Edmund's kindly nature was charmed to see the cockatrice so much improved in health, and he said, "Don't mention it. Delighted, I'm sure," when the cockatrice began to thank him. "But what can I do for you?" said the creature. "Tell me stories," said Edmund. "About what?" said the cockatrice. "About true things that they don't know in school," said Edmund. So the cockatrice began. and he told him about mines and treasure and geological formations, and about gnomes and fairies and dragons, and about glaciers and the Stone Age and the beginning of the world, and about the unicorn and the phoenix, and about magic, black and white. And Edmund ate his eggs and his turnover and listened. And when he got hungry again, he said goodbye and went home. But he came again the next day for more stories, and the next day, and the next, for a long time. He told the boys at school about the cockatrice and his wonderful true tales, and the boys liked the stories, but when he told the master, he was caned for untruthfulness. "But it's true," said Edmund. "Just you look where the fire burnt my hand." "I see you've been playing with fire, into mischief as usual," said the master, and he caned Edmund harder than ever. The master was ignorant and unbelieving, but I told him that some schoolmasters are not like that. Now one day Edmund made a new lantern out of something chemical that he sneaked in from the school laboratory, and with it he went exploring again to see if he could find the things that made the other sorts of noises. And in quite another part of the mountain he found a dark passage all lined with brass, so that it was like the inside of a huge telescope. And at the very end of it he found a bright green door. There was a brass plate at the door that said, "Mrs. D. Knock and Ring," and a white label that said, "Call me at 3." Edmund had a watch, and it had been given to him on his birthday 2 days before, and he had not yet had time to take it to pieces to see what made it go, so it was all still going. He looked at it now, and it said 2:45. Edmund crept. Did I tell you before? Sorry. Sorry. The pages jumped. Did I tell you before what a kind-hearted boy Edmund was? He sat down on the brass doorstep and waited till 3 o'clock. Then he knocked and rang, and there was a rattling and puffing inside. The great door flew open, and Edmund had only just time to hide behind it when out came an immense yellow dragon, who wiggled off down the brass cave like a long rattling worm, or perhaps more like a monstrous centipede. Edmund crept slowly out and saw the dragon stretching herself on the rocks in the sun, and he crept past the great creature and tore down the hill into the town and burst into the school crying out, "There's a great dragon coming! Somebody ought to do something, or we shall all be destroyed." He was caned for untruthfulness without any delay. His master was never one for postponing a duty. "But it's true," said Edmund. "You just see if it isn't." He pointed out the window, and everybody could see a vast yellow cloud rising up into the air above the mountain. "It's only a thunder shower," said the master, and caned Edmund more than ever. This master was not like some masters I know of. He was very obstinate, and he would not believe his own eyes if they told him everything different from what he had been saying before his eyes spoke. So while the master was writing, "Lying is very wrong, and liars must be caned. It is all for their own good," on the blackboard for Edmund to copy out 700 times, Edmund sneaked out of school and ran for his life across the town to warn his granny. But she was not at home. So then he made off through the back door of the town and raced up the hill to tell the cockatrice and ask for his help. It never occurred to him that the cockatrice might not believe him. You see, he had heard so many wonderful tales from him and had believed them all. And when you believe all a person's stories, they ought to believe yours. It's only fair. At the mouth of the cockatrice's cave, Edmund stopped, very much out of breath, to look back at the town. As he ran, he had felt his little legs tremble and shake, while the shadows of the great yellow cloud fell upon him. Now he stood once more between the warm earth and blue sky, and looked down on the green plain dotted with fruit trees and red-roofed farms and plots of gold corn. In the middle of the plain, the gray town lay, with its strong walls and holes pierced for the archers, and its square towers with holes for dropping melted lead on the heads of strangers. Its bridges and its steeples, the quiet river edged with willow and alder, and the pleasant green garden place in the middle of the town where people sat on holidays to smoke their pipes and listen to the band. Edmund saw it all, and he saw too, creeping across the plain, marking her way back, marking her way by a black line, as everything withered at her touch, the great yellow dragon. And he saw that she was many times bigger than the whole town. "Oh, my poor granny," said Edmund, and he had a feeling heart, as I ought to have told you before. The yellow dragon crept nearer and nearer, licking her greedy lips with her long red tongue, and Edmund knew that in the school his master was still teaching earnestly and still not believing Edmund's tale the least little bit. "He'll jolly well have to believe it soon, anyhow," said Edmund to himself, and though he was a very tender-hearted boy, I think it only fair to tell you that he was this. I am afraid he was not as sorry as he ought to have been to think of the way in which his master was going to learn how to believe what Edmund said. Then the dragon opened her jaws wider and wider and wider. Edmund shut his eyes, for though his master was in the town, the amiable Edmund shrank from beholding the awful sight. When he opened his eyes again, there was no town, only a bare place where it had stood, and the dragon licking her lips and curling herself up to go to sleep, just as a kitty does when she's quite finished with a mouse. Edmund gasped once or twice, and then ran to the cave to tell the cockatrice. "Well," said the cockatrice thoughtfully, when the tale had been told, "what then?" "I don't think you quite understand," said Edmund gently. "The dragon has swallowed up the town." "Does it matter?" said the cockatrice. "But I live there," said Edmund blankly. "Never mind," said the cockatrice, turning over in the pool of fire to warm its other side, which was chilly, because Edmund had, as usual, forgotten to close the cave door. "You can live here with me." "I'm afraid I haven't made my meaning clear," said Edmund patiently. "You see, my granny is in the town, and I can't bear to lose my granny like this." "I don't know what a granny may be," said the cockatrice, who seemed to be growing weary of the subject. "But if it's a possession to which you attach any importance—" "Of course it is," said Edmund, losing patience at last. "Oh, do help me! What can I do?" "If I were you," said his friend, stretching itself out in the pool of flame so that the waves covered him up to his chin, "I should find that drakeling and bring it here." "But why?" said Edmund. He had gotten into the habit of asking why at school, and the master had always found it trying. As for the cockatrice, he was not going to stand that sort of thing for a moment. "Oh, don't talk to me," he said, splashing angrily in the flames. "I give you advice, take it or leave it. I shan't bother about it any more. If you bring the drakeling here to me, I'll tell you what to do next. If not, not." And the cockatrice drew the fire up close around his shoulders, tucked himself up in it, and went to sleep. Now, this was exactly the right way to manage Edmund, only no one had ever thought of trying to do it before. He stood for a moment, looking at the cockatrice. The cockatrice looked at Edmund out of the corner of his eye and began to snore very loudly, and Edmund understood, once and for all, that the cockatrice wasn't going to put up with any nonsense. He respected the cockatrice very much from that moment, and set off at once to do exactly as he was told, for perhaps the first time in his life. Though he had played truant so often, he knew one or two things that perhaps you don't know, though you have always been so good and gone to school regularly. For instance, he knew that a drakeling is a baby dragon, and he felt sure that what he had to do was to find the third of the three noises that people hear when coming from the mountain. Of course, the clucking had been the cockatrice, and the big noise, like the large gentleman asleep after dinner, had been the big dragon. So the smaller rumbling must have been the drakeling. He plunged boldly into the caves and searched and wandered and wandered and searched, and at last he came to the third door in the mountain, and on it was written, "The baby is asleep." Just before the door stood 50 pairs of copper shoes, and no one could have looked at them for a moment without seeing what sort of feet they were made for each shoe had 5 holes in it for the drakeling's 5 claws, and there were 50 pairs because the drakeling took after its mother and had 100 feet. No more, no less. He was the kind of Dracocentopedus in the learned books. Edmund was a good deal frightened, but he remembered the grim expression of the cockatrice's eye, and the fixed determination of his snore still rang in his ears. In spite of the snoring of the drakeling, which was in itself considerable, he screwed up his courage, flung the door open, and called out, "Hello, you drakeling! Get out of bed this minute!" Just going to pause there for a second. Hey, Mama Ghost. It's good to see you. Far out. I hope you're doing well. These are bedtime stories, yes. We relax and we read on Monday. Hey, Purple Moon. It's good to see you. Mystic. Good to see you, my friend. We're just reading the last book in the Book of Dragons, and then depending on what you all select, we're going to get into next. But really appreciate y'all being here. Got 10 readers here. 19 likes already. Appreciate you. The drakeling stopped snoring and said sleepily, "It ain't time yet." "Your mother says you are to, anyhow. And look sharp about it, what's more," said Edmund, gaining courage from the fact that the drakeling had not yet eaten him. The drakeling sighed, and Edmund could hear it get out of bed. The next moment it began to come out of its room and to put on its shoes. It was not nearly as big as its mother, only about the size of the Baptist chapel. "Hurry up," said Edmund as it fumbled clumsily with its 17th shoe. "Mother said I was never to go out without my shoes," said the drakeling, so Edmund had to help it put 'em on. It took some time, and it was not a comfortable occupation. At last the drakeling said it was ready, and Edmund, who had forgotten to be frightened, said, "Come on, then," and they went back to the cockatrice. The cave was rather narrow for the drakeling, but it made itself thin, as you may see a fat worm do when it wants to get through a narrow crack in a piece of hard earth. "Here it is," said Edmund, and the cockatrice woke up at once and asked the drakeling very politely to sit down and wait. "Your mother will be here presently," said the cockatrice, stirring up its fire. The drakeling sat down and waited, but it watched the fire with hungry eyes. "I beg your pardon," it said at last, "but I am always accustomed to having a little basin of fire as soon as I get up, and I feel rather faint. Might I?" It reached out a claw towards the cockatrice's basin. "Certainly not," said the cockatrice sharply. "Where were you brought up? Didn't they ever teach you we must not ask for all we see, eh?" "I beg your pardon," said the drakeling humbly, "but I am really very hungry." The cockatrice beckoned Edmund to the side of the basin and whispered in his ear so long and so earnestly that one side of the dear boy's hair was quite burnt off. And he never once interrupted the cockatrice to ask why. But when the whispering was over, Edmund, whose heart, as I may have mentioned, was very tender, said to the drakeling, "If you are really hungry, poor thing, I can show you to where there is plenty of fire." And off he went through the caves, and the drakeling followed. When Edmund came to the proper place, he stopped. There was a round iron thing in the floor, like the ones the men shoot the coals down into your cellars, only much larger. Edmund heaved it up by the hook that stuck out of one side, and a rush of hot air came up that nearly choked him. But the drakeling came close and looked down with one eye and sniffed and said, "That smells good, huh?" "Yes," said Edmund. "Well, that's the fire in the middle of the earth. There's plenty of it, all done to a turn. You'd better go down and begin your breakfast, haven't you?" So the drakeling wiggled through the hole and began to crawl faster and faster down the slanted shaft that leads to the fire in the middle of the earth. And Edmund, doing exactly as he had been told, for a wonder, caught the end of the drakeling's tail and ran the iron hook through it so that the drakeling was held fast, and it could not turn around or wiggle up again and look after its poor tail. Because, as everyone knows, the way to the fires below is very easy to go down, but quite impossible to come back on. There is something about it in Latin beginning facilis descensus. So there was the drakeling, fast by the silly tail of it, and there was Edmund, very busy and important, and very pleased with himself, hurrying back to the cockatrice. "Now," said he. "Well, now," said the cockatrice, "go to the mouth of the cave and laugh at the dragon so that she hears you." Edmund very nearly said, "Why?" But he stopped in time, and instead he said, "She won't hear me." "Oh, very well," said the cockatrice. "No doubt you know best." And he began to tuck himself up again in the fire, so Edmund did as he was bid. And when he began to laugh, his laughing echoed in the mouth of the cave, till it sounded like the laughter of a whole castle full of giants. And the dragon, lying asleep in the sun, woke up and said very crossly, "What are you laughing at?" "At you," said Edmund, and went on laughing. The dragon bore it as long as she could, but like everyone else, she couldn't stand being made fun of. So presently she dragged herself up the mountain very slowly, because she had just had a rather heavy meal, and stood outside and said, "What are you laughing at?" in a voice that made Edmund feel as if he could never laugh again. Then the cockatrice called out, "At you! You've eaten your own drakeling, swallowed it with the town, your own little drakeling, ha 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 hee hee." And Edmund found the courage to cry, "Ha ha!" which sounded like tremendous laughter in the echo of the cave. "Dear me," said the dragon, "I thought the town stuck in my throat rather. I must take it out," and looked through it more carefully. And with that she coughed and choked, and there was the town on the hillside. Edmund had run back to the cockatrice, and it had told him what to do, so before the dragon had time to look through the town again for her drakeling, the voice of the drakeling itself was heard howling miserably from inside the mountain, because Edmund was pinching its tail as hard as he could in the round iron door, like the one where the men pour the coals out of the sacks in the cellar. And the dragon heard the voice and said, "Why, whatever's the matter with my baby? He's not here," and made herself thin and crept into the mountain to find her drakeling. The cockatrice kept on laughing as loud as it could, and Edmund kept on pinching, and presently the great dragon, very long and narrow, she had made herself, found her head where the round hole was in the iron lid. Her tail was a mile or two off outside the mountain. When Edmund heard her coming, he gave one last nip to the drakeling's tail, and then heaved up the lid and stood behind it, so that the dragon could not see him. Then he loosened the drakeling's tail from the hook, and the dragon peeped down the hole just in time to see her drakeling's tail disappear down the smooth, slanting shaft with one last squeak of pain. Whatever may have been the poor dragon's other fault, she was an excellent mother. She plunged headfirst into the hole and slid down the shaft after her baby. Edmund watched her head go, and then the rest of her. She was so long now she had to stretch herself thin, that it took all night. It was like watching a goods train go by in Germany. When the last joint of her tail had gone, Edmund slammed down the iron door. He was a kind-hearted boy, as you would have guessed, and he was glad to think that the dragon and drakeling would now have plenty to eat of their favorite food forever and ever. He thanked the cockatrice for his kindness, and got home just in time to have breakfast, and get to school by 9. Of course, he could not have done this if the town had been in the old place by the river in the middle of the plain, but it had taken root on the hillside, just where the dragon left it. "Well," said the master, "where were you yesterday?" Edmund explained, and the master at once caned him for not speaking the truth. "But it is true," said Edmund. "Why, the whole town was swallowed by a dragon. You know it was." "Nonsense," said the master. "That was a thunderstorm and an earthquake, that's all," and he caned Edmund more than ever. "But," said Edmund, who always would argue, even in the last favorable circumstances, "how do you account for the town being on a hillside now instead of by the river as it used to be?" "It was always on the hillside," said the master, and all the classes said the same, for they had more sense than to argue with a person who carried a cane. "But look at the maps," said Edmund, who wasn't going to be beaten in argument. Whatever he might be in the flesh, the master pointed to the map on the wall. There was the town on the hillside, and nobody but Edmund could see that, of course, the shock of being swallowed by the dragon had upset all the maps and put them wrong. And then the master caned Edmund again, explaining that this time he, not for untruthfulness, but for his vexatious argumentative habits. This will show you what a prejudiced and ignorant man Edmund's master was, how different from the revered head of that nice school where your good parents are kind enough to send you. The next day, Edmund thought he would prove his tale by showing people the cockatrice, and he actually persuaded some people to go into the cave with him. But the cockatrice had bolted himself in and would not open the door. So Edmund got nothing but that except a scolding for taking people on a wild goose chase. A wild goose, they said, is nothing like a cockatrice. And poor Edmund could not say a word, though he knew how wrong they were. The only person who believed him was his granny. But then she was very old and very kind, and had always said she was the best of boys. Only one good thing came of all this long story. Edmund was never quite the same boy since. He does not argue quite so much, and he agreed to be apprenticed to a locksmith, so that he might one day be able to pick the lock of the cockatrice's front door, and learn some more of the things that people don't know. But he is quite an old man now, and he hasn't gotten the door open yet. And that's the end of that chapter. Raphilosophy. Frank Poem. Oh man, Frank Raid. What's going on, Frank? It's good to see you, brother. Hope you're doing well. I hope your stream went well. How are you doing? I didn't even see it. I'm sorry, Frank. How was your stream? Appreciate you, Rafa. Great stream. Excellent. Welcome in. Welcome in. Appreciate you guys smashing the like button. Got 23 likes, 10 people in. And that was the end of the Book of Dragons. Did some gaming. Nice. Gaming and hanging. Nothing better. But we just finished the Book of Dragons. I do have a poll up top there. And I will let you all decide what we are going to get into next, because, of course, we do have a little bit of time. We're not even at an hour yet. And I knew that last one was going to be pretty good. And it was pretty good. I liked it. Dragon swallowing up a town and how we got them to give it back. Ooh, the Brothers Grimm has a demanding lead. A demanding lead. Let's see. How many voters? It was 21 votes. 31 minutes ago. All right, let me pull up the Brothers Grimm. Take a peek. I voted. Let's go, Brothers Grimm. I do not like the end of it because it feels unresolved. The story, yeah, I agree. I can agree with that. It wasn't that. It wasn't that. Was it this one? Yes, it was. Do I have the Brothers Grimm? I swear I did. Oh, maybe I saw. Maybe it was a story by the Brothers Grimm in the. That could be. Oh, please. Just looking for it right now, y'all. Give me 1 second. Right, Brothers Grimm. Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. Let's do it. Let's do it. I don't think anything else is going to overtake it. But of course, Wizard of Oz, Hans Christian Andersen are still very much coming up in the future. So we're going to end that. And let's see what Brothers Grimm fairy tales we have. Let's see, the first story is The Frog King or Iron Henry. There's a lot of books in here. I like it. The Girl Without Hands, Clever Hans, The Three Languages, Clever Elise, The Tailor in Heaven, The Wedding of Mrs. Fox. I guess it would really depend on how big these stories are, too. So let's go with The Frog King, or Iron Henry, it's called. And we'll see. My Kindle wants to stick. Oh, that's super cool. I got a whole little biography. Okay, these are quite literally short stories. This is perfect. And we're going to get to hear a lot of stories that we might not have got to hear otherwise. Anything springy, Grimm might be good to keep until fall. Well, we just got out of fall. But we can see how it goes. There's really no theme as of now. But yeah, I was going to fall back on The Wizard of Oz because we kind of stopped right there when Halloween came around. But this one isn't long. Let's read one of these stories here and we'll kind of see what the feel is like. Yeah, Chewbacca. He's got a skateboard. Yep, found that in like TJ Maxx 20 years ago for like $5. The Frog King or Iron Henry. Oh, come on. All right. In old times, when wishing still helped one, there lived a king whose daughters were all beautiful. But the youngest was so beautiful that the sun itself, which has seen so much, was astonished whenever it shone in her face. Close by the king's castle lay a great dark forest, and under an old lime tree in the forest it was a well. And when the day was very warm, the king's child went out into the forest and sat down by the side of the cool fountain. And when she was dull, she took the golden ball and threw it up on high and caught it, and this ball was her favorite plaything. Now it so happened that on one occasion the princess's golden ball did not fall into the little hand which she was holding up for it, but on the ground beyond, and rolled straight into the water. The king's daughter followed it with her eyes, but it vanished, and the well was deep, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. On this she began to cry, and cried louder and louder, and could not be comforted. And she thus lamented, someone said to her, "What ails thee, king's daughter? Thou weepest so that even the stone would show pity." She looked around to the side from whence the voice came, and saw a frog stretched forth its thick, ugly head from the water. "Ah, old water splasher, is it thou?" said she. "I am weeping for my golden ball, which has fallen into the well." "Be quiet, and do not weep," answered the frog. "I can help thee. But what wilt thou give me if I bring thy plaything up again?" "Whatever thou wilt do, dear frog," said she, "my clothes, my pearls, my jewels, and even the golden crown which I am wearing." The frog answered, "I do not care for thy clothes, thy pearls and jewels, or thy golden crown. But if thou wilt love me, and let me be thy companion and playfellow, and sit by thee at thy little table, and eat off thy little golden plate, and drink out of thy little cup, and sleep in thy little bed. If thou wilt promise me this, I will go down below and bring thee thy golden ball up again." "Oh, yes," she said, "I promise thee all thou wilt, and thou wilt bring me my ball back again." She, however, thought, "How the silly frog does how the silly frog does talk. He lives in the water with the other frogs, and croaks, and can be no companion to any human being." But the frog, when he had received this promise, put his head into the water and sank down, and in a short while came swimming up again with the ball in his mouth, and threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was delighted to see her pretty plaything once more, and picked it up and ran away with it. "Wait, wait," said the frog, "take me with thee. I can't run I can't run as thou canst." But what did it avail him to scream his croak, croak after her as loudly as he could? She did not listen to it, but ran home and soon forgot the poor frog, who was forced to go back into his well again. The next day, when she had seated herself at the table with the king and all the courtiers, and was eating from her little golden plate, something came creeping, splish, splash, up the marble staircase. And when it had got to the top, it knocked at the door and cried, "Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me." She ran to see who was outside, but when she opened the door, there sat the frog in front of it. Then she slammed the door to, in great haste, sat down to dinner again, and was quite frightened. The king saw plainly that her heart was beating violently, and said, "My child, what art thou so afraid of? Is there perchance a giant outside who wants to carry thee away?" "Ah, no," she replied. "It is no giant, but a disgusting frog." "What does a frog want with thee? Ah, dear father, yes, dear, they didn't put a break there. Ah, dear father, yesterday I was in the forest sitting by the well playing, my golden ball fell in the water. And because I cried so, the frog brought it out again for me, and because he so insisted, I promised he should be my companion. But I never thought he would be able to come out of his water, and now he is outside there and wants me to come into him." In the meantime, it knocked a second time and cried, "Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me. Dost thou now not know what thou saidst to me yesterday by the cool waters of the fountain? Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me." Then said the king, "That which thou hast promised must thou perform. Go, let him in." She went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in and followed her step by step to her chair. There he sat and cried, "Lift me up beside thee." She delayed, until at last the king commanded her to do it. When the frog was once on the chair, he wanted to be on the table. And when he was on the table, he said, "Now push thy little golden plate nearer to me, that we may eat together." She did this, but it was easy to see that she did not do it willingly. The frog enjoyed what he ate, and almost every mouthful she took choked her. At length he said, "I have eaten and I am satisfied. Now I am tired. Carry me into thy little room and make thy little silken bed ready, and we shall both lie down and go to sleep." The king's daughter began to cry, for she was afraid of the cold frog, which she did not like to touch, and which was now to sleep in her pretty clean little bed. But the king grew angry and said, "He who helped thee when thou wert in trouble ought not afterwards be so despised by thee." So she took hold of the frog with 2 fingers, carried him upstairs, and put him in the corner. But when she was in bed, he crept into her and said, "I am tired. I want to sleep as well as thou. Lift me up, or I will tell thy father." Then she was terribly angry, and took him up and threw him with all her might against the wall. "Now thou wilt be quiet, odious frog," she said. But when he fell down, he was no frog, but a king's son with beautiful, kind eyes. He by her father's will was now her dear companion and husband. Then he told her how he had been bewitched by a wicked witch, and how no one could have delivered him from the well but herself, and that tomorrow they would go together to his kingdom. Then they went to sleep, and next morning when the sun awoke them, a carriage came driving up with 8 white horses, which had white ostrich feathers on their heads, and were harnessed with golden chains, and behind stood the young king's servant, Faithful Henry. Faithful Henry had been so unhappy with his master when his master was changed into a frog, that he had caused 3 iron bands to be laid around his heart, lest it should burst with grief and sadness. The carriage was to conduct the young king into his kingdom. Faithful Henry helped them both in and placed himself behind again, and was full of joy because of the deliverance. And when they had driven a part of the way, the king's son heard a cracking behind him, as if something had broken. So he turned around and cried, "Henry, the carriage is breaking!" "No, master, it's not the carriage. It is a band from my heart, which was put there in my great pain when you were a frog and imprisoned in the well." Again and once again, while they were on their way, something cracked, and each time the king's son thought the carriage was breaking, but it was only the bands which were springing from the heart of the faithful Henry, because his master was set free and was happy. I don't know if that was the full story. Extra avocado, how's it going? Wouldn't be a Steelers game unless we took crap to win. Grab the next slide. My Steelers are giving me a heart palpitation. No worries at all, Don. Appreciate you being here. One more ring, just one. Hope you're doing well, Extra Avocado. That was the whole story there. I feel like there was a few paces that were missing. This is showing that it's annotated, but I hope that doesn't mean they cut out a whole bunch of stuff. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I thought it was quite cute. Kind of reminded me of that classic, like, Kiss the Frog turns into a prince thing, but this one decided to chuck it against a wall. Same thing, same thing. But let's read another, shall we? Yeah, those are good games. I really can't stand blowout games. This one is called Cat and Mouse in Partnership. The world would be a brighter place if cat and mice learned to work together. Appreciate you guys. Got 11 ghosty readers here, 24 likes on the stream. A certain cat had made the acquaintance of a mouse, and had said so much to her about the great love and friendship she felt for her, that at length the mouse agreed that they should live and keep house together. "But we must make provision for winter, or else we shall suffer from hunger," said the cat. "And you, little mouse, cannot venture anywhere, or you will be caught up in a trap some day." The good advice was followed, and a pot of fat was bought, and they did not know much where to put it. At length, after much consideration, the cat said, "I know no place where it will be better stored up than in a church, for no one dares to take anything away from there. We will set it beneath the altar and not touch it until we are really in need of it." So the pot was placed in safety. But it was not long before the cat had a great yearning for it, and said to the mouse, "I want to tell you something, little mouse. My cousin had brought a little son into this world, and had asked me to be a godmother. He is white with brown spots, and I am to hold him over the front at the christening. Let me go out today, and you look after the house by yourself." "Yes, yes," answered the mouse. "By all means go, and if anything very good, think of me. I should like a drop of sweet red christening wine too." All this, however, was untrue. The cat had no cousin, and had not been asked to be a godmother. She went straight to the church, stole the pot of fat, and began to lick at it, and licked the top of the fat off. Then she took a walk upon the roofs of the town, looked out for opportunities. Then she stretched herself in the sun, and licked her lips whenever she thought of the pot of fat, and not until it was evening did she return home. "Well, here you are again," said the mouse. "No doubt you have had a merry day." "All went off well," answered the cat. "What name did they give the child?" "Top off," said the cat, quite coolly. "Top off," cried the mouse. "That is a very odd and uncommon name. It is a usual one of your family. Is it a usual one of your family?" "What does it signify?" said the cat. "It is no worse than Crumb Stealer, as your godchildren are called." Before long the cat was seized by another fit of longing. She said to the mouse, "You must do me a favor, and once more manage the house for a day alone. I am again asked to be a godmother, and, as the child has a white ring around his neck, I cannot refuse." The good mouse consented, but the cat crept behind the town walls to the church, and devoured half the pot of fat. "Nothing ever seems so good as one keeps to oneself," she said, and was quite satisfied with her day's work. When she went home, the mouse inquired, "And what was the child christened?" "Half done," answered the cat. "Half done? What are you saying? I have never heard of a name in my life. I'll wager anything on it. Not in the calendar." The cat's mouth soon began to water for some more licking. "All good things go in threes," she said. "I am asked to stand godmother again. The child is quite black, only it has white paws. But with that exception, it has not a single white hair on its whole body. This only happens once every few years. You will let me go, won't you?" "Top off, half done," answered the mouse. "They are such odd names. They make me very thoughtful. You sit at home," said the cat, "in your dark gray fur coat and long tail, and are filled with fantasies. That's because you do not go out in the daytime." During the cat's absence, the mouse cleaned the house and put it in order, but the greedy cat entirely emptied the pot of fat. "When everything is eaten up, one has some peace," said she to herself, and, well filled and fat, she did not return home till night. The mouse once asked the name it had given to the third child. "It will not please you more than the others," said the cat. "He is called All Gone." "All Gone!" cried the mouse. "That is the most suspicious name of all. I have never seen it in print. All Gone! What can that mean?" And she shook her head, curled herself up, and lay down to sleep. From this time forth, no one invited the cat to be godmother. But when the winter had come and there was no longer anything to be found outside, the mouse thought of the provision and said, "Come, cat, we will go to our pot of fat, which we have stored up ourselves. We shall enjoy that." "Yes," answered the cat, "you will enjoy it as much as you would enjoy sticking a dainty tongue of yours out the window." They set out on their way, but when they arrived, the pot of fat certainly was still in its place, but it was empty. "Alas!" said the mouse, "now I see what has happened. Now it comes to light. You are a true friend. You have devoured all when you were standing godmother. First top off, then half done, then—" "Will you hold your tongue?" cried the cat. "One more word, and I'll eat you too. All gone," was already on the poor mouse's lips. Scarcely had she spoken it before the cat sprang on her, seized her, and swallowed her down vertically. That is the way of the world. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I didn't know this man was 7'6". That's a full extended size man. Yeah, this is a jumbo. This is a flat screen TV. I hope you're doing well, ALB. 618. Next, what's going on next? Jay's Mix coming in. Dirk McGurk, how's it going? Welcome in next and Raiders. Anytime Kev waves, cause a 60-mile. Well, it's true. It's true. I'm the giant in these mountains. I hope you are all doing well. I got 16 people in here, 27 likes. Super appreciate you guys. We're actually just reading through some Brothers Grimm fairy tales. That was one about a friendship between a cat and a mouse, but it all ended as the way of the world ends. The cat ate the mouse. Very, 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 yes, eye-opening. Hey, what's going on, Kev? It's good to see you. But yes, for those unaware, my true size, I am 6'5" and a half. Definitely, definitely have problems with gravity. Basketball in his hands is like a softball to a peasant. Oh, you guys. You're funny, yeah. Hope everybody had a great day. Yeah, that's me drinking Monster at 8:30 at night. Appreciate that, Rafa. Gotta do this real quick. Come on. Right. Let's go into one more. I'm kind of liking these nice little short stories. They're really good. Digging the shirt. Thanks. Appreciate that. It's my retro Chewbacca in Southern California, rocking a skateboard. The Rebel Alliance on it. And once again, Al, super appreciate the comment bomb last night. Really helped, and I'm so close to 1,000 now. It's good to see all of you here. Let's enjoy one more story here, at least from the Brothers Grimm. It's called Our Lady's Child. Full disclosure, no idea what we're going to get into and read. Much different times, these stories, so apologies now. Hard by a great forest dwell a woodcutter with his wife, who had an only child, a little girl 3 years old. They were so poor, however, that they no longer had daily bread, and did not know how to get food for her. One morning the woodcutter went out sorrowfully to his work in the forest, and while he was cutting wood, suddenly there stood before him a tall and beautiful woman, with a crown shining stars on her head, who said to him, I am the Virgin Mary, mother of the child Jesus. Thou art poor and needy. Bring thy child to me. I will take her with me to be her mother and care for her. The woodcutter obeyed, brought his child, and gave her to the Virgin Mary, who took her up to heaven with her. There the child fared well, ate sugared cakes and drank sweet milk, and her clothes were of gold, and the little angels played with her. And when she was 14 years of age, the Virgin Mary called her one day and said, Dear child, I am going to make a long journey. So take into thy keeping the keys of these 13 doors of heaven. 12 of these thou mayest open, and behold the glory which is within them. But the 13th, to which this little key belongs, is forbidden thee. Beware of opening it, or thou wilt bring misery on thyself. The girl promised to be obedient, and when the Virgin Mary was gone, she began to examine the dwelling of the kingdom of heaven. Each day she opened one of them, until she made the round of 12. In each of them sat one of the apostles of the midst of the great light, and she rejoiced in all the magnificence and splendor. And the little angels who always accompanied her rejoiced with her. Then the forbidden door alone remained, and she felt a great desire to know what could be hidden behind it, and said to the angels, I will not quite open it, I will not go inside it, I will unlock it so that we can just see a little through the opening. Oh no, said the little angels, that would be a sin, the Virgin Mary has forbidden it, and it might easily cause thy unhappiness. Then she was silent, but the desire in her heart was not stilled, but gnawed there and tormented her, and let her have no rest. And once, when the angels had all gone out, she thought, Now I'm quite alone, I could peep in. If I do it, no one will ever know. She sought out the key, and when she had got it in her hand, she put it in the lock, and when she put it in and turned it round as well, the door sprang open, and she saw there the Trinity sitting in the fire and splendor. She stayed there a while, and looked at everything in amazement. Then she touched the light a little with her finger, and her finger became quite golden. Immediately a great fear fell on her, so she shut the door violently and ran away. Her terror, too, would not quit her. Let her do what she might, and her heart beat continually and would not be still. The gold too stayed on her finger and would not go away. Let her rub it and wash it, never so much. It was not long before the Virgin Mary came back from her journey. She called the little girl before her and asked to have the keys of heaven back. When the maiden gave her the bunch, the Virgin looked into her eyes and said, Hast thou opened the 13th door also? No, she replied. Then she laid her hand on the girl's heart and felt how it beat and beat, and saw right well that she had disobeyed her order and had opened the door. Then she said once again, "Art thou certain that thou hast not done it?" "Yes," said the girl, for the second time. Then she perceived the finger which had become golden from touching the fire of heaven, and saw well that the child had sinned, and said for the third time, "Hast thou not done it?" "No," said the girl for a third time. Then said the Virgin Mary, "Thou hast not obeyed me, and besides that thou hast lied. Thou art not worthy to be in heaven." Then the girl fell into a deep sleep, and when she awoke she lay on the earth below in the midst of the wilderness. She wanted to cry out, but she could bring forth no sound. She sprang up and wanted to run away, but whithersoever she turned herself, she was continually held back by the thick hedges of thorns through which she could not break. In the desert, in which she was imprisoned, there stood an old hollow tree, and this had to be her dwelling place. Into this she crept when night came, and here she slept. Here, too, she found a shelter from storm and rain, and it was a miserable life, and bitterly did she weep when she remembered how happy she had been in heaven, and how the angels had played with her. Roots and wild berries were her only food, and for these she sought as far as she could go. In the autumn, she picked up the fallen nuts and leaves and carried them into the hole. The nuts were her food in the winter, and when snow and ice came, she crept amongst the leaves like poor little animal, that she might not freeze. But before long her clothes were all torn, and one bit of them after another fell off her. As soon the sun shone warm again, she went out and sat in front of the tree, and her long hair covered her on all sides like a mantle. Thus she sat there year after year, and felt the pain and misery of the world. One day, when the trees were once more clothed in fresh green, the king of the country was hunting in the forest, and followed a roe. And as it had fled into the thicket which shut in this part of the forest, he got off his horse, tore the bushes asunder, and cut himself a path with his sword. When he at last forced his way through, he saw a wonderfully beautiful maiden sitting under a tree, and she sat there, and was entirely covered with her golden hair down to her very feet. He stood still and looked at her full of surprise. Then he spoke to her and said, "Who art thou? Why art thou sitting there in the wilderness?" But she gave no answer, for she could not open her mouth. The king continued, "Wilt thou go with me to my castle?" Then she just nodded her head a little. The king took her in his arms, carried her to his horse, and rode home with her. And when he reached the royal castle, he caused her to be dressed in beautiful garments, and gave her all the things in abundance. Although she could not speak, she was still so beautiful and charming that he began to love her with all his heart, and it was not long before he married her. After a year or so had passed, the queen brought a son into the world. Thereupon the Virgin Mary appeared to her in the night when she lay in her bed alone, and said, "If thou wilt tell me the truth and confess that thou didst unlock the forbidden door, I will open thy mouth and give thee back thy speech. But if thou perseverest in thy sin and deniest obstinity, I will take thy newborn child away with me." Then the queen was permitted to answer, but she remained hard and said, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." And the Virgin Mary took the newborn child from her arms and vanished with it. Next morning, when the child not be found, it was whispered among the people that the queen was a man-eater and had killed her own child. She heard all this and could say nothing to the contrary, but the king would not believe it, for he loved her so much. Pause there for just a second. Cousin on a shirt, sure do. Sure do. This is a good little story. I like it. It's got some good moral messages. I still don't know why she would lie, though. Take $0 to be a good person. When a year had gone by, the queen again bore a son. And in the night the Virgin Mary came again to her and said, "If thou willst confess that thou openest the forbidden door, I will give thee thy child back and untie thy tongue. But if you continuest in sin and deniest it, I will take away with me this new child also." Then the queen again said, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." Then the virgin took the child out of her arms and away with her to heaven. Next morning, when this child also disappeared, the people declared quite loudly that the queen had devoured it, and the king's counselors demanded that she should be brought to justice. The king, however, loved her so dearly that he would not believe it, and commanded the counselors under pain of death not to say any more about it. The following year, the queen gave birth to a beautiful little daughter, and for the third time the Virgin Mary appeared to her in the night and said, "Follow me." She took the queen by the hand and led her to heaven, and showed her there her two eldest children who smiled at her and were playing with the ball of the world. When the queen rejoiced thereat, the Virgin Mary said, "Is thy heart not yet softened? If thou wilt own that thou openedst the forbidden door, I will give thee back thy two little sons." But for the third time the queen answered, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." Then the Virgin let her sink down to earth once more, and took from her likewise her third child. The next morning, when the loss was reported abroad, all the people cried loudly, "The queen is a man-eater, she must be judged." And the king was no longer able to restrain his counselors. Thereupon a trial was held, and as she could not answer and defend herself, she was condemned to be burnt alive. The wood was got together, and when she was fast bound to the stake, and the fire began to burn around her, the hard ice of pride melted her heart. The hard ice of pride melted. Her heart was moved by repentance, and she thought, "If I could but confess before my death that I opened the door." Then her voice came back to her, and she cried out loudly, "Yes, Mary, I did it." And straightway rain fell from the sky and extinguished the flames of fire, and a light broke forth above her, and the Virgin Mary descended with the two little sons by her side, and the newborn daughter in her arms. She spoke kindly to her and said, "He who repents his sin and acknowledges it is forgiven." Then she gave her the three children, untied her tongue, and granted her happiness for her whole life. Cool. Yeah, these stories are really short. I think these are like paraphrase stories. I imagine that these could be a lot longer. But I'm liking the pace of these and the quickness of it. Let me know what you guys think. You guys liking these stories? That one had a lot of the religious undertones, but it was still a good story, good message. Never lie. Never lie. But also that it's never too late to own up and apologize. Never too late. Ooh, this next one is right up the alley of Pokey Ghost Town. I like them. Thanks, Mama. Appreciate you. Still got 12 of you here. We'll probably keep going for maybe another hour. Make that solid 2.5. I am sleepy tonight, so I want to get some good sleep for work tomorrow. Well, let's keep going. This one is called The Story of the Youth Who Went Forth to Learn What Fear Was. A certain father had two sons, the eldest of whom was smart and sensible and could do everything, but the younger was stupid and could neither learn nor understand anything. And when people saw him, they said, "There's a fellow who will give his father some trouble." And when anything had to be done, it was always the elder who was forced to do it. But if his father bade him fetch anything when it was late or in the night time, and the way led through the churchyard or any other dismal place, he answered, "Oh no, father, I'll not go there. It makes me shudder." For he was afraid. Or when stories were told by the fire at night which made the flesh creep, like listeners sometimes said, "Oh, it makes us shudder." The younger one sat in the corner and listened with the rest of them and could not imagine what they could mean. They were always saying, "It makes me shudder, it makes me shudder." "It does not make me shudder," thought he. "That, too, must be an art of which I understand nothing." Now it came to pass that his father said to him one day, "Hearken to me, thou fellow in the corner there. Thou art growing tall and strong, and thou too must learn something by which thou can earn thy living. Look how thy brother works. But thou dost not even earn thy salt. Well, father, he replied, I am quite willing to learn something. Indeed, if it could but managed, I should like to learn how to shudder. I don't understand that at all yet. The elder brother smiled when he heard that and thought to himself, Good God, what a blockhead that brother of mine is. He will never be any good for anything as long as he lives. He who wants to be a sickle must bend himself betimes. The father sighed and answered him, Thou shalt soon learn what it is to shudder, but thou wilt not earn thy bread by that. Soon after this, the sexton came to the house on a visit, and the father bewailed his trouble and told him how his younger son was so backward in every respect that he knew nothing and learnt nothing. Just think, said he, when I asked him how he was going to earn his bread, he actually wanted to learn to shudder. If that be all, replied the sexton, he can learn that with me. Send him to me, and I will soon polish him. The father was glad to do it, for he thought, It will train my boy a little. The sexton thereafter took him into his house, and he had to ring a bell, and he had to ring the bell. After a day or two, the sexton awoke him at midnight and bade him arise and go up to the church tower and ring the bell. Thou shalt soon learn what shuddering is, thought he, and secretly went there before him. And when the boy was at the top of the tower and turned around and was just going to take hold of the bell rope, he saw a white figure standing on the stairs opposite the sounding hole. Who is there? He cried, but the figure gave no reply and did not move or stir. Give an answer, cried the boy, or take thyself off. Thou hast no business here at night. The sexton, however, remained standing motionless, that the boy might think he was a ghost. The boy cried a second time, What do you want here? Speak if thou art an honest fellow, or I'll throw thee down the steps. The sexton thought, He can't intend to be as bad as his words, uttered no sound, and stood as if he were made of stone. Then the boy called to him for a third time, and as this was also to no purpose, he ran against him and pushed the ghost down the stairs, so that it fell 10 steps and remained lying there in the corner. Thereupon he rang the bell, went home, and without saying a word, he went to bed and fell asleep. The sexton's wife waited a long time for her husband, but he did not come back. At length she became uneasy, and wakened the boy, and asked, Dost thou not know where my husband is? He climbed up the tower before you didst. No, I don't know, replied the boy, but someone was standing by the sounding hole on the other side of the steps, and as he would neither give me an answer nor go away, I took him for a scoundrel and threw him downstairs. Just go there and you'll see if he's there. Just go there and you will see if it is he. I should be sorry if it were. The woman ran away and found her husband, who was lying, moaning in the corner, and had broken his leg. She carried him down, and then with loud screams she hastened to the boy's father. Your boy, cried she, has been the cause of great misfortune. He has thrown my husband down the steps and made him break his leg. Take a good-for-nothing fellow away from our house. The father was terrified, and ran thither and scolded the boy. What wicked tricks are these? He said. The devil must have put you into this head. The devil must have put this into thy head. Father, he replied, do listen to me. I am quite innocent. He was standing there by night like no one is intending to do some evil. I did not know who it was, and I entreated him 3 times either to speak or go away. Ah, said the father, I have nothing but unhappiness with you. Get out of my sight. I will see thee no more. Yes, father, right willingly. Wait only until it's day. Then I will go forth and learn how to shudder. And then I shall, at any rate, understand one art which will support me. Learn what thou wilt, spake the father. It is the same to me. Here are 50 thalers for 3. Take these and go to the wide world, and tell no one from whence thou comest, or who is thy father, for I have reason to be ashamed of thee. Yes, father, it shall be as you will. If you desire nothing more than that, I can easily keep it in mind. When day dawned, therefore, the boy put his 50 thalers into his pocket and went forth onto the great highway, and continually said to himself, If I could but shudder, if I could but shudder. Then a man approached who heard his conversation, which the youth was holding with himself, and when they had walked a little farther to where they could see the gallows, the man said to him, "Look, there is a tree where 7 men have married the ropes maker's daughter, and are now learning how to fly. Sit down below it and wait till night comes, and you will soon learn how to shudder." "If that is all it is wanted," answered the youth, "it is easily done. But if I learn how to shudder as fast as that, thou shalt have my 50 thalers. Just come back to me early in the morning." Then the youth went to the gallows, sat down below it, and waited till evening came. And as he was cold, he lighted himself a fire. But at midnight the wind blew so sharply that, in spite of his fire, he could not get warm. And as the wind knocked the hanged men against each other, they moved backwards and forwards. He thought to himself, "Thou shiverest below thy fire, but how those up there must freeze and suffer." And then he felt pity for them. He raised the ladder and climbed up, unbound one of them after the other, and brought them all down, all 7. Then he stirred the fire, blew it, and set them all around it to warm themselves. But they sat there and did not stir, and the fire caught their clothes. So he said, "Take care, or I will hang you up again." The dead men, however, did not hear, but were quite silent, and let their rags go on burning. On this he grew angry and said, "If you will not take care, I cannot help you. I will not be burnt with you." And he hung them up again, each in its turn. Then he sat down by the fire and fell asleep. And the next morning the man came to him and wanted to have the 50 thalers, but said, "Well, dost thou not know how to shudder?" "No," answered he. How was I to get to know? How was I to get to know? Those fellows up there did not open their mouths, and were so stupid that they had let a few old rags which they had on their bodies get burnt." Then the man saw that he would not get the 50 thalers that day, and went away saying, "One of this kind has never come my way before." The youth likewise went his way, and once more began to mutter to himself, "Ah, if I could but shudder! Ah, if I could but shudder!" A wagoner who was striding behind him heard that. He asked, "Who are you?" "I don't know," answered the youth. Then the wagoner asked, "From whence comest thou?" "I know not." "Who is thy father?" "That I may not tell thee." "What is that thou art always muttering between thy teeth?" "Ah," replied the youth, "I do so wish I could shudder, but no one can teach me how to do it." "Give up thy foolish chatter," said the wagoner. "Come on, go with me. I will see about a place for thee." The youth went with the wagoner, and in the evening they arrived at an inn where they wished to pass the night. Then at the entrance of the room the youth again said quite loudly, "If I could but shudder! If I could but shudder!" The host, who heard this, laughed and said, "If that is your desire, you ought to be a good opportunity for you here." "Ah, be silent," said the hostess. "So many inquisitive persons have already lost their lives. It would be a pity and a shame if such beautiful eyes as these should never get to see daylight again." But the youth said, "However difficult it may be, I will learn it, and for this purpose indeed I have journeyed forth." He let the host have no rest until he later told him that not far from thence stood a haunted castle, where anyone could easily learn what shuddering was, if he would but watch it for 3 nights. The king had promised that he who would venture should have his daughter to wife, and she was the most beautiful maiden the sun shone on. Great treasures likewise lay in the castle, which were guarded by evil spirits, and these treasures would then be freed, and would make a poor man rich enough. Already many men have gone into the castle, but as yet none had come out again. Then the youth went next morning to the king, and said if he were allowed to he would watch 3 nights in the haunted castle. The king looked at him, and as the youth pleased him, he said, "Thou mayest ask for 3 things to take to the castle with thee, but they must be things without life." Then he answered, "Then I ask for a fire, a turning lathe, and a cutting board with a knife." The king had these things carried into the castle for him during the day. When night was drawing near, the youth went up and made himself a bright fire in one of the rooms, placed the cutting board and knife beside it, and seated himself on the turning lathe. "Ah, if I could but shudder," he said, "but I shall not learn it here either." Towards midnight he was about to poke his fire, and as he was blowing it, something cried suddenly from one corner, "Ah, mew, how cold are we!" "You simpletons!" cried he, "what are you crying about?" If you are cold, come and take seat by the fire and warm yourself." And when he had said that, two great black cats came with one tremendous leap and sat down on each side of him, and looked savagely at him with their fiery eyes. After a short time, when they had warmed themselves, they said, "Comrade, shall we have a game at cards?" "Why not?" he replied, "but just show me your paws." Then they stretched out their claws. "Oh," said he, "what long nails you have! Wait, I must first cut them for you." Thereupon he seized them by their throats, put them on the cutting board, and screwed their feet fast. "I have looked at your fingers," said he, and my fancy for card playing is gone." And he struck them dead and threw them into the water. But when he had made away with these two, and was about to sit down again by his fire, out from every hole in the corner came black cats and black dogs with red-hot chains, and more of them came until he could no longer stir. And they yelled horribly and got into his fire, pulled it to pieces, and tried to put it out. He watched them for a while quietly, but at last, when they were going too far, he seized his cutting knife and cried, "Away with ye, vermin!" and began to cut them down. Part of them ran away, and the others he killed, and threw out into the fish pond. When he came back and fanned the embers with of his fire again, and warmed himself, and as he thus sat, his eyes would keep open no longer, and he felt a desire to sleep. Then he looked around and saw a great bed in the corner. "That is the very thing for me," said he, and got into it. When he just when he was just going to shut his eyes, however, the bed began to move of its own accord, and went over the whole of the castle. "That's right," he said, "but go faster." Then the bed rolled on as if 6 horses were harnessed to it, up and down and over thresholds and steps, but suddenly, hop, hop, it turned over upside down and lay on him like a mountain. But he threw quilts and pillows up in the air, got out, and said, "Now anyone who likes may drive," and lay down by the fire and slept till it was day. In the morning the king came, and when he saw him lying there on the ground, he thought the evil spirits had killed him, and he was dead. Then said he, "After all, it is a pity. He is a handsome man." The youth heard it, got up, and said, "It has not come to that yet." Then the king was astonished, but very glad, and asked how he had fared. "Very well indeed," answered he. "One night is passed, and 2 others will get over likewise." Then he went to the innkeeper, who opened his eyes very wide, and said, "I never expected to see thee alive again. Hast thou learned how to shudder yet?" "No," said he. "It is all in vain, if someone else would but tell me." The second night he again went up into the old castle, sat down by the fire, and once more began his old song, "If I could but shudder." When midnight came, an uproar and noise of tumbling about was heard. At first it was low, but it grew louder and louder. Then it was quiet for a while, and at length, with a loud scream, half a man came down the chimney and fell before him. "Hullo!" cried he. "Another half belongs to this. This is too little." Then the uproar began again. There was a roaring and howling, and the other half fell down likewise. "Wait," said he, "I will just blow up the fire a little for thee." Then he had done that and looked around again. The two pieces were joining together, and a frightful man was sitting in his place. "There is no part of our bargain," said the youth. "The bench is mine." The man wanted to push him away. The youth, however, would not allow that, but thrust him off with all his strength, and seated himself again on his own place. Then still more men fell down. One after another, they brought 9 dead men's legs and 2 skulls, and set them up and played at 9 pins with them. The youth also wanted to play, and said, "Hark you, can I join you?" "Yes, if thou hast any money." "Money enough," replied he, "but your balls are not quite round." Then he took the skulls and put them in the lathe, and turned them until they were round. "There, now they'll roll better," he said. "Hurrah! Now it goes merrily." He played with them and lost some of his money, but when it struck 12, everything vanished from his sight. He lay down and quietly fell asleep. The next morning the king came to inquire after him. "How was it fared for you this time?" he asked. "I have been playing at 9 pins," he answered, "and I've lost a couple of farthings." "Hast thou not shuddered then?" What?" said he. "I have made merry. If I did not know what it was to shudder." The third night he sat down again on his bench, and said quite sadly, "If I could but shudder." When it grew late, 6 tall men came in and brought a coffin. Then he said, "Ha ha! That is certainly my little cousin who died only a few days ago." And he beckoned with his finger and cried, "Come, little cousin, come." They placed the coffin on the ground, but he went to it and took off the lid, and a dead man lay therein. He felt his face, but it was cold as ice. "Stop," said he. "I will warm thee a little." And he went to the fire and warmed his hand, and laid it on the dead man's face. But he remained cold. Then he took him out, and sat him by the fire, and laid him on his breast, and rubbed his arm, that the blood might circulate again. As this also did no good, he thought to himself, when two people lie in bed together, they warm each other, and carried him to the bed, covered him over, and lay down by him. After a short time, the dead man became warm too, and began to move. Then said the youth, "See, little cousin, have I not warmed thee?" The dead man, however, got up and cried, "Now I will strangle thee." "What?" said he. "Is that the way thou thankest me? Thou shalt not once, thou shalt at once go into thy coffin again." And he took him up, threw him into it, and shut the lid. Then came the 6 men and carried him away again. "I cannot manage to shudder," said he. "I shall never learn it here as long as I live." Then a man entered who was taller than the others, and looked terrible. He was old, however, and had a long white beard. "Thou wretch," cried he, "thou shalt soon learn what it is to shudder, for thou shalt die." "Not so fast," replied the youth. "If I am to die, I shall have to have a say in it." "I will soon seize thee," said the fiend. "Softly, softly, do not talk so big. I am as strong as thou art, and perhaps even stronger." "We shall see," said the old man. "If thou art stronger, I will let thee go. Come, we will try." Then he led him by dark passages to a smith's forge, took an axe, and with one blow struck an anvil into the ground. "I can do better than that," said the youth, and went to the other anvil. The old man placed himself near and wanted to look on, and his white beard hung down. Then the youth seized the axe, split the anvil with one blow, and struck the old man's beard with it. "Now I have thee," said the youth. "Now it is thou who will have to die." Then he seized the iron bar and beat the old man till he moaned and entreated him to stop. And he would have given him great riches. The youth drew out an axe and let him go. The old man led him back to the castle, and in the cellar showed him 3 chests full of gold. "Of these," he said, "one part is for the poor, the other for the king, the third is thine." In the meantime it struck 12, and the spirit disappeared. The youth, therefore, was left in darkness. "I shall still be able to find my way out," said he, and felt about, found a way into the room, and slept there by his fire. Next morning the king came and said, "Now thou must have learnt what shuddering is, no?" "No," he answered. "What can it be?" "My dead cousin was here, and the bearded man came and showed me a great deal of money down below. But no one told me what it is to shudder." "Then," said the king, "thou hast delivered the castle, and shall marry my daughter." "That is all very well," he said, "but I still don't know what it is to shudder." Then the gold was brought up and the wedding celebrated. But howsoever much the youth king loved his wife, and however happy he was, he still said always, if I could but shudder, if I could but shudder." And at last she was angry at this. Her waiting maid said, "I will find a cure for him. He shall soon learn what it is to shudder." She went out to the stream, which flowed through the garden, and had a whole bucket full of gudgeons brought with her. At night, when the youth king was sleeping, his wife was to draw the clothes off of him, and empty the bucketful of cold water with the gudgeons in it over him, so that the little fishes would sprawl about him. When this was done, he woke up and cried, "Oh, what makes me shudder so?" "What makes me shudder so, dear wife?" "I now know what it is to shudder." Cute. Mrs. 5150, I hope you're doing well. Mama Ghost still hanging out. How are you and the fam? How are you and the fam indeed? Hope everybody's having a great night. Almost right there to 30 likes. Got 15 peeps in here. Appreciate you, my ghosty readers. We will keep going here. This book is so large that just reading the way that we've been reading, if we were to read it all the way through, it would take us 25 hours to do it. That's how big this book is. So we got plenty of reading material here of these little stories. Just finished dinner and we're working on the Pokedex binder. Let's go. Let's go. Yes, dinner will be after this stream for me. So I think we'll do a couple more and then we might call it just a little early. Maybe. We'll see. But now I'm starting to feel a little sleepy myself. Got my monster. Ori. Eric Ribs. Appreciate you, fam. What's for dinner? I believe it's going to be a turkey sandwich. Love sandwiches. Subs. Yeah, best food. Appreciate you being here, Eric. Hope you're enjoying these stories here. And we're going to read the next one, which is called The Wolf and the 7 Little Kids. No idea what we're going to get into here, but enjoy. I'm hungry now, yeah. There was once upon a time an old goat who had 7 little kids and loved them with all the heart of a mother for her children. One day, she wanted to go into the forest and fetch some food. So she called all seven to her and said, "Dear children, I have to go into the forest. Be on your guard against the wolf. If he comes in, he will devour you all, skin, hair, and all. The wretch often disguises himself, but you will know him at once by his rough voice and his black feet." The kids said, "Dear mother, we will take good care of ourselves. You may go away without any anxiety." Then the old one bleated and went on her way with an easy mind. It was not long before someone knocked at the house door and called, "Open the door, dear children, your mother is here, and she has brought something back with her for each of you." But the little kids knew that it was the wolf by the rough voice. "We will not open the door," they cried. "Thou art not our mother. She has a soft, pleasant voice, but thy voice is rough. Thou art a wolf." Then the wolf went away to a shopkeeper and bought himself a great lump of chalk, ate this, and made his voice soft with it. Then he came back, knocked at the door of the house, and cried, "Open the door, dear children, your mother is here, and she has brought something back with her for each of you." But the wolf had laid his black paws against the window, and the children saw them and cried, "We will not open the door. Our mother has not black feet like thee. Thou art the wolf." Then the wolf ran to a baker and said, "I have hurt my feet. Rub some dough over them for me." And when the baker had rubbed his feet over, he ran to the miller and said, "Sew some white meal over my feet for me." The miller thought to himself, "The wolf wants to deceive somebody," and refused. But the wolf said, "If thou wilt not do it, I will devour thee." Then the miller was afraid and made his paws white for him. Truly, men are like that. So now the wretch went for the third time to the house door, knocked at it, and said, "Open the door for me, children. Your dear mother has come home, and she has brought every one of you something back from the forest with her." The little kids cried, "First show us thy paws, and we may know if thou art our dear little mother." Then he put his paws in through the window, and when the kids saw that they were white, they believed that all he said was true, and opened the door. But who should come in but the wolf? They were terrified and wanted to hide themselves. One sprang under the table, the second into the bed, the third into the stove, the fourth into the kitchen, the fifth into the cupboard, the sixth under the washing bowl, and the seventh into the clock case. But the wolf found them all and used no great ceremony. One after another he swallowed them down his throat. The youngest, who was in the clock case, was the only one he did not find. When the wolf was satisfied his appetite, he took himself off, laid himself down under the tree in the garden, in the green meadow outside, and began to sleep. Soon afterward, the old goat came home again from the forest. Ah, what a sight she saw there! The house door stood wide open, the table, chairs, and benches were thrown down, the washing bowl lay broken to pieces, and the quilts and pillows were pulled off the bed. She sought her children, but they were nowhere to be found. She called them one after another by name, but no one answered. At last, when she came to the youngest, a soft voice cried, "Dear mother, I am in the clock case." She took the kid out and told her that the wolf had come and had eaten all the others. Then you may imagine how she wept over her poor children. At length, in her grief, she went out, and the youngest kid ran with her. When they came to the meadow, there lay the wolf by the tree and snored so loud that the branches shook. She looked at him on every side and saw that something was moving and struggling in his gorged belly. "Ah, heavens!" she said. "Is it possible that my poor children, whom he has swallowed down for his supper, could still be alive?" Then the kid had to run home and fetch scissors and a needle and thread, and the goat cut open the monster's stomach, and hardly had she made one cut, and then one little kid thrust its head out, and when she cut further, all six sprang out, one after another, and they were all still alive, and had suffered no injury whatever. For in his greediness the monster had swallowed them down whole. What rejoicing there was! They embraced their dear mother and jumped like a sailor at his wedding. The mother, however, said, "Now go and look for some big stones, and we will fill this wicked beast's stomach with them, while he is still asleep." Then the seven kids dragged the stones thither with all speed, and put as many of them into his stomach as they could get in, and the mother sewed him up again with great haste, so that he was not aware of anything and never once stirred. When the wolf at length had had his sleep out, he got on his legs, and as the stones in his stomach made him very thirsty, he wanted to go to the well to drink. But when he began to walk and move about, the stones in his stomach knocked against each other and rattled. Then cried he, "What rumbles and tumbles against my poor bones? I thought it was 6 kids, but it not but big stones." And when he got to the well and stooped over and drank, and was just about to drink, the heavy stones made him fall in, and there was no help, but he had to drown miserably. When the 7 kids saw that, they came running to the spot and cried out aloud, "The wolf is dead! The wolf is dead!" and danced for joy around the well with their mother. See, that's just a weird way to end a story. I think these are like summaries of stories, it almost sounds like. I'm sharing cards at Pokemon Pocket, watching Kev, getting ready to finish up a new PC hooked up. Let's go. New Zealand family here, watching you on our TV in the lounge. Appreciate you guys. Had pork rib tacos. All right, let's go. Let's go. I like that. I am going to do research on these stories and see if they were intentionally meant to be longer, because these just are so weird way to end them. But they're nice and short, and they do have good stories. I don't know what moral that story was trying to, you know, don't open the door for people you don't know. Don't trust so willingly. I think I like that the one person was like, "Yeah, you want to deceive somebody. I'm not going to do it." Of course, he kind of lost my respect when he's like, "Oh, you're going to eat me? Okay, I'll do it." Don't eat rocks, right? Don't sow rocks in your gut and then drink from a lake. But let's keep going and learn about Faithful John. There was once on a time an old king who was ill and thought to himself, "I am lying on what must be my deathbed." Then said he, "Tell Faithful John to come to me." Faithful John was his favorite servant, and was so called because he had his whole life long been so true to him. When therefore he came beside the bed, the king said to him, "Most faithful John, I feel my end approaching, and have no anxiety except about my son. He is still of tender age, and cannot always know how to guide himself. If thou dost not promise me to teach him everything that he ought to know, and to be his foster father, I cannot close my eyes in peace." Then answered Faithful John, "I will not forsake him, and I shall serve him with fidelity, even if it should cost me my own life." On this, the old king said, "Now I die in comfort and peace." And then he added, "After my death, thou shalt show him the whole castle, all the chambers, halls, and vaults, and all the treasures which lie therein. But the last chamber in the long gallery, in which is the picture of the princess of the golden dwelling, shalt thou not show. If he sees that picture, he will fall violently in love with her, and will drop down in a swoon and go through great danger for her sake. Therefore thou must preserve him from that." And when faithful John had once more given his promise to the old king about this, the king said no more, but laid his head on his pillow and died. When the old king had carried to his grave, faithful John told the young king all that he had promised his father on his deathbed, and said, "This will be assuredly performed, and will be faithful to thee as I have been faithful to him, even if it should cost me my life." Then the morning was over. Faithful John said to him, "It is now time that thou shalt showest thee thine inheritance. I will show thee thy father's palace." Then he took him about everywhere, up and down, and let him see all the riches and the magnificent apartments. Only there was one room which he did not open, that in which hung the dangerous picture. The picture was, however, so placed that when the door was opened, you looked straight on it, and it was so admiringly painted that it seemed to breathe and live, and there was nothing more charming and more beautiful in the whole world. The young king, however, plainly remarked that faithful John always walked past this one door, and said, "Why dost thou never open this one for me?" "There is something within it," he replied, "which would terrify thee." But the king answered, "I have seen all the palace, and I will know what is in this room also." And he went and tried to break open the door by force. Then faithful John held him back and said, "I promised thy father before his death that thou shouldest never see what is in this chamber. It might bring the greatest misfortune on thee and on me." "Ah, no," replied the young king. "If I do not go in, it will be my certain destruction. I should have no rest day or night until I have seen it with my own eyes. I shall not leave the palace now until thou hast unlocked the door." Then faithful John saw that there was no help for it now, and with a heavy heart and many sighs, sought out the key from the great bunch. When he had opened the door, he went in first, and thought by standing before him he could hide the portrait so that the king should not see it in front of him. But what availed that? The king stood on tiptoe and saw it over his shoulder. And when he saw the portrait of the maiden, which was so magnificent and shone with gold and precious stones, he fell fainting to the ground. Faithful John took him up, carried him to his bed, and sorrowfully thought, "The misfortune has befallen us. Lord God, what will be the end of it?" Then he strengthened him with wine until he came to himself again. The first words the king said were, "Ah, the beautiful portrait, whose is it?" "That is the princess of the golden dwelling," answered the faithful John. Then the king continued, "My love for her is so great that if all the leaves on all the trees were tongues, they could not declare it. I will give my life to win her. Thou art my most faithful John. Thou must help me." The faithful servant considered within himself for a long time how to set about the matter, for it was difficult even to obtain a sight of the king's daughter. At length he thought of a way, and said to the king, "Everything which she has about her is of gold, tables, chairs, dishes, glasses, bowls, and household furniture. Among thy treasures are 5 tons of gold. Let one of the goldsmiths of the kingdom work these up into all manners of vessels and utensils, into all kinds of birds, wild beasts, and strange animals, such as may please her, and we will go there with them and try our luck." The king ordered all the goldsmiths to be brought to him, and they had to work night and day until at last the most splendid things were prepared. When everything was stowed on board a ship, faithful John put on the dress of a merchant, and the king was forced to do the same in order to make himself quite unrecognizable. Then they sailed across the sea and sailed on until they came to a town wherein dwelt the princess of the golden dwelling. Faithful John bade the king stay behind on the ship and wait for him. "Perhaps I shall bring the princess with me," said he. "Therefore see that everything is in order. Have the golden vessels set out and the whole ship decorated." Then he gathered together in his apron all kinds of gold things, went on shore, and walked straight to the royal palace. When he entered the courtyard of the palace, a beautiful girl was standing there by the well with 2 golden buckets in her hands, drawing water with them. And when she was just turning around to carry away the sparkling water, she saw the stranger and asked who he was. So he answered, "I am a merchant," and opened his apron and let her look in. Then she cried, "Oh, what beautiful gold things!" and put her pails down and looked at the golden wares one after another. Then said the girl, "The princess must see these. She has such great pleasure in golden things that she will buy all you have." She took him by the hand and led him upstairs, for she was the waiting maid. When the king's daughter saw the wares, she was quite delighted and said, "They are so beautifully worked that I will buy all of thee." But faithful John said, "I am only the servant of a rich merchant. The things I have here are not to be compared with those my master has in his ship. They are the most beautiful and valuable things that have ever been made in gold." She wanted to have everything brought to her there, but he said, "There are so many of them that it would take a great many days to do that, and so many rooms would be required to exhibit them, that your house is not big enough." Then her curiosity and longing were still more excited, until at last she said, "Conduct me to the ship. I will go there myself and behold the treasures of thine master." On this faithful John was quite delighted, and led her to the ship. And when the king saw her and perceived that her beauty was even greater than the picture he had represented it to be, and thought no other than that his heart would burst in twain. Then she got into the ship, and the king led her within. Faithful John, however, remained behind with the pilot, and ordered the ship be pushed off, saying, "Set all sail, till it fly like a bird in the air." Within, however, the king showed her the golden vessels, every one of them, also the wild beasts and strange animals. Many hours went by whilst she was seeing everything, and in her delight she did not observe that the ship was sailing away. After she had her looked at last, she thanked the merchant and wanted to go home. But when she came to the side of the ship, she saw that it had been deep sea far from land, and hurrying onwards with all sail set. "Ah!" she cried in alarm, "I am betrayed! I am carried away and have fallen into the power of a merchant. I would die rather." The king, however, seized her hand and said, "I am not a merchant, I am a king, and of no meaner origin than thou art. And if I have carried thee away with subtlety, it has come to pass because of my exceeding great love for thee. And first time that I looked at thy portrait, I fell fainting to the ground." When the princess of the golden dwelling heard that, she was comforted, and her heart was inclined unto him, so that she willingly consented to be his wife. It so happened, however, while they were sailing onwards over the deep sea, that faithful John, who was sitting on the fore part of the vessel, making music, saw 3 ravens in the air, which came flying towards them. On this he stopped playing and listened to what they were saying to each other, for they had well understood, for that he well understood. One cried, "Oh, there he is, carrying home the princess of the golden dwelling." "Yes," replied the second. "But he has not got her yet," said the third. "But he has got her. She is sitting beside him in the ship." Then the first began again, and cried, "What good will that do him?" Uh, when they reach the land, a chestnut horse will leap forward to meet him, and the prince will want to mount it. But if he does that, it will run away with him and rise up into the air with him, and he will never see his maiden more," spake the second. "But is there no escape?" "Oh, yes, if any one else gets on it swiftly and takes out the pistol, which must be in its holster, and shoots the horse dead with it, the young king is saved. But who knows that? And whoever does know it, and tells it to him, will be turned to stone from toe to knee." Then said the second, "I know more than that, and even if the horse be killed, the young king will still not keep his bride. When they go into the castle together, the wrought bridal garment will be lying there in a dish, and looking as if it were woven of gold and silver. It is, however, nothing but sulphur and pitch, and if he put it on, it will burn him to the very bone and marrow." Said the third, "There is no escape at all?" "Oh, yes," replied the second. "If any one of the gloves on seizes the garment and throws it into the fire and burns it, the young king will be saved. But what avails that? Whoever knows that whoever knows it and tells it to him, half his body will become stone from the knee to the heart. Then said the third, I know still more. Even if the bridal garment be burned, the young king will still not have his bride. After the wedding, when the dancing begins, the young queen is dancing. She will suddenly turn pale and fall down as if dead. And if someone does not lift her up and draw 3 drops of blood from her right breast and spit them out again, she will die. But if any one who knows that were to declare it, he would become stone from crown of his head to the sole of his foot. When the ravens had spoke of this together, they flew onwards, and faithful John had well understood everything. But from that time forth he became quiet and sad, for if he concealed what he had heard from his master, the latter would be unfortunate, and if he discovered it to him, he himself must sacrifice his life. At length, however, he said to himself, I will save my master, even if it bring destruction on myself. When therefore they came to shore, all happened as it had been foretold by the ravens, and the magnificent chestnut horse sprang forward. Good, said the king, he shall carry me to my palace, and was about to mount it when faithful John got before him, jumped quickly on it, drew the pistol out of his holster, and shot the horse. Then the other attendants of the king, who after all were not very fond of faithful John, cried, How shameful to have killed the beautiful animal! That was to have carried the king to his palace. But the king said, Hold your peace and leave him alone. He is my most faithful John. Who knows what may be the good of that? They went into the palace, and in the hall there stood a dish, and thereon lay the bridal garment, looking no otherwise than if it were made of gold and silver. The young king went towards it, and was about to take hold of it, but faithful John pushed him away, seized it with gloves on, carried it quickly to the fire, and burned it. The other attendants again began to mutter, and said, Behold, now he is even burning the king's bridal garment. But the young king said, Who knows what good he may have done? Leave him alone. He is my most faithful John. And now the wedding was solemnized, the dance began, and the bride also took part in it. Then faithful John was watching and looked in her face, and suddenly she turned pale and fell to the ground as if she were dead. On this he ran hastily to her, lifted her up, lifted her up and bore her into a chamber. Then he laid her down and knelt and sucked 3 drops of blood from her right breast and spat them out. Immediately she breathed again and recovered herself. But the young king had seen this, and being ignorant why faithful John had done it, was angry and cried, Throw him into the dungeon! Next morning, faithful John was condemned and led to the gallows, and when he stood on high, he was about to be executed. He said, Everyone who has to die is permitted before his end to make one last speech. May I claim that right too? Yes, answered the king. It shall be granted upon thee. Then, said faithful John, I am unjustly condemned. I have always been true to thee. And he related how he had hearkened to the conversation of the ravens when on the sea, and how he had been obliged to do all these things in order to save his master. Then cried the king, Oh, my most faithful John, pardon, pardon, bring him down. But as faithful John spoke the last word, he had fallen down lifeless and became a stone. Thereupon the king and queen suffered great anguish, and the king said, Ah, how ill I have requited great fidelity, and ordered the stone figure to be taken up and placed in his bedroom beside his bed. And as often as he looked on it, he wept and said, Ah, if I could just bring thee to life again, my most faithful John. Some time passed, and the queen bore twins, 2 sons, who grew fast and were her delight. Once when the queen was at church, and the 2 children were sitting playing beside their father, the latter, full of grief, again looked at the stone figure, sighed, and said, Ah, if I could just bring thee to life again, my most faithful John. Then the stone began to speak and said, Thou canst bring me to life again if thou wilt use for that purpose what is dearest to thee. Then cried the king, I will give thee everything I have in the world for thee. The stone continued, If thou wilt, will cut off the heads of thy 2 children with thy own hand, and sprinkle me with their blood, I shall be restored to life. The king was terrified when he heard that he himself must kill his dearest children. But he thought of Faithful John's great fidelity and how he had died for him, drew his sword, and with his own hand cut off the children's heads. My God. And when he had smeared the stone with their blood, life returned to it, and Faithful John stood once more safe and healthy before him. He said to the king, "Thy truth shall not go unrewarded," and took the heads of the children, put them on again, and rubbed the wounds with their blood, on which they became whole again immediately, and jumped about and went on playing as if nothing had happened. Then the king was full of joy, and when he saw the queen coming, he hid Faithful John and the two children in the great cupboard. When she entered, he said to her, "Hast thou been praying in the church?" "Yes," answered she, "but I have constantly been thinking of Faithful John and what misfortune has befallen him through us." Then said he, "Dear wife, we can give him his life again, but it will cost us our two little sons, whom we must sacrifice." The queen turned pale, and her heart was full of terror, but she said, "We owe it to him for his great fidelity." Then the king was rejoiced that she thought as he had thought, and went and opened the cupboard, and brought forth Faithful John and the children, and said, "God be praised, he is delivered, and we have our little sons again also," and told her how everything had occurred. Then they dwelt together in much happiness until their deaths. That was a little weird. Not that, good night. Good night, Jesse. Really appreciate you. Problems with gravity. How far behind are you, Extra Avocado? That was a while ago. Don't eat rocks. That's funny. Unless I'm backwards. Nope. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your night, Jesse. We're probably going to wrap it up here soon. Yes, problems with gravity. Let's see here. All right, we're going to do one more. One more, and we'll call it a night. Right? That was a while ago. Appreciate you being here, Extra Avocado. I'm just going to take a look at something real quick here. Figured that before we read this, we can see if there's anybody on that we want to visit and read. Jay's Vicariously, Shiny Pieces of Cardboard, Pokeboys. We haven't rated Vicariously in a while. Let's do it. Unless anybody has any other suggestions, let me know in the chat. I'll save that for now. But we'll go see the fourth Kev after this. And the seventh story is called The Good Bargain. There was once a peasant who had driven his cow to the fair and sold her for 7 thalers. On the way home, he had to pass the pond, and already from afar he heard the frogs crying, "Ike, Ike, Ike." "Well," said he to himself, "they are talking without rhyme or reason. It is 7 that I have received, not 8." When he got into the water, he cried to them, "Stupid animals that you are, don't you know better than that? It is 7 thalers and not 8." The frogs, however, stood their talk, "Ache, ache, ache." "Come then, if you don't believe it, I can count it out to you." Then he took his money out of his pocket and counted out 7 thalers, always reckoning 4 and 20 Goshen to the thaler. The frogs, however, paid no attention to his reckoning, but still cried, "Ache, ache, ache." "What?" cried the peasant, quite angry. "Since you are determined to know better than I, count it yourselves," and threw all the money into the water to them. He stood still and waited, and wanted to wait until they were done, and had brought him his own again. But the frogs maintained their opinion and cried continually, "Ache, ache, ache," and besides that, did not throw the money out again. He still waited a long while until everything came on, and he was forced to go home. Then he abused the frogs and cried, "You water splashers, you thick heads, you goggle eyes! You have great mouths and can screech till you hurt one's ears, but you cannot count 7 thalers. Do you think I'm going to stand here till you get it done?" And with that he went away, but the frogs still cried, "Ache, ache, ache," after him till they went home. till he went home quite angry. After a while, he brought another cow, which he killed, and he made a calculation that if he sold the meat, well, he might gain as much as 2 cows were worth, and have a skin into the bargain. When therefore he got to the town with the meat, a great troop of dogs were gathered together in front of the gate, with a large greyhound at the head of them, which jumped at the meat, snuffed at it, and barked, "Wow, wow, wow!" As there was no stopping him, the peasant said to him, "Yes, yes, I know quite well. Thou art saying, 'Wow, wow, wow,' because thou wantest some of the meat. But I should fare badly if I were to give it to thee." The dog, however, answered nothing more but, "Wow, wow." "Wilt thou promise not to devour it all, then, and wilt thou go bail for thy companions?" "Wow, wow, wow," said the dog. "Well, if thou insist on it, I will leave it for thee. I know thee well, and know who is thy master. But this I tell thee, I must have my money in 3 days, or else it will go ill with thee. Thou must just bring it out to me." Thereupon he unloaded the meat and turned back again. The dogs fell upon it and loudly barked, "Wow, wow." The countryman who heard them from afar said to himself, "Hark! Now they all want some, but the big one is responsible to me for it." When 3 days had passed, the countryman thought, "Tonight my money will be in my pocket," and was quite delighted, but no one would come to pay it. "There is no trusting anyone now," he said, and at last he lost patience and went into the town to the butcher and demanded his money. The butcher thought it was a joke, but the peasant said, "Jesting apart, I will have my money. Did not the great dog bring you the whole of the slaughtered cow 3 days ago?" Then the butcher grew angry, snatched a broomstick, and drove him out. "Wait a while," said the peasant. "There is still some justice in the world," and went to the royal palace and begged for an audience. He was led before the king, who sat with his daughter, and asked him what injury he had suffered. "Alas," said he, "the frogs and the dogs have taken from me what is mine, and the butcher has paid me for it with the stick." And he related at full length all that had happened. Thereupon the king's daughter began to laugh heartily, and and the king said to him, "I cannot give you justice in this, but you shall have my daughter to wife for it. In her whole life she has never yet laughed as she has just done at thee. And I have promised her to whom could make her laugh, thou mayest thank God for thy good fortune." "Oh," answered the peasant, "I will not have her. I have a wife already, and she is one too many for me. When I go home, it is just as bad as if I had a wife standing in every corner." Then the king grew angry and said, "Thou art a boor." "Ah, lord king," replied the peasant, "what can you expect from an ox but beef?" "Stop," answered the king. "Thou shalt have another reward. Be off. Come back in 3 days, and then thou shalt have 500 counted out in full." When the peasant went out by the gate, the sentry said, "Thou hast made the king's daughter laugh, so thou wilt certainly receive something good." "Yes, that is what I think," answered the peasant. 500 are to be counted out for me." "Hark thee," said the soldier, "give me some of it. What canst thou do with all that money?" "As it is thou," said the peasant, "thou shalt have 200. Present myself in 3 days' time before the king, and let it be paid to thee." A Jew who was standing by and had heard the conversation ran after the peasant, held him by the coat, and said, "Oh wonder what luck child thou art! I will change it for thee. I will change it for thee into small coins. What dost thou want with the great thalers?" "Jew," said the countryman, 300 canst thou still have? Give it to me at once in coin. In 3 days from this thou wilt be paid for it by the king." The Jew was delighted with the profit, and brought the sum of the bad groschen, 3 of which were worth 2 good ones. After 3 days had passed, according to the king's command, the peasant went before the king. "Pull off his coat," said the latter, "and he shall have his 500. "Ah," said the peasant, "they no longer belong to me. I present 200 of them to the sentinel, and 300 to the Jew has changed for me, so by right nothing at all belongs to me." In the meantime, the soldier and the Jew entered and claimed what they have gained from the peasant, and they received the blows strictly counted out. The soldier bore it patiently and knew already how it tasted, but the Jew said sorrowfully. Alas, alas, these are the heavy thalers. These are the heavy thalers? The king could not help laughing at the peasant, and as all his anger was gone, he said, As thou hast already lost thy reward before it fell into thy lot, I will give thee something in the place of it. Go into my treasure chamber and get some money for thyself, as much as thou wilt. The peasant did not need to be told twice, and stuffed into his big pockets whatsoever he could go in. Afterwards he went to an inn and counted out the money. The Jew had crept after him, and heard how he muttered to himself, That rogue of a king has cheated me after all. Why could he not have given me the money himself, and then I should have known what I had? How can I tell now if what I have had the luck to put in my pockets is right or not? Good heavens, said the Jew to himself, that man is speaking disrespectfully of our lord the king. I will run and inform, and then I shall be rewarded, and he shall be punished as well. When the king heard of the peasant's word, he fell into a passion and commanded the Jew, Go and bring the offender to him. The Jew ran to the peasant. If you are to go at once to the lord king in the very clothes you have on. I know what is right better than that, answered the peasant. I shall have a new coat made first. Dost thou think the man with so much money in his pockets is to go there in this ragged old coat? The Jew, as he saw that the peasant would not stir without another coat, and as he feared that if the king's anger cooled, he himself would lose his reward, and the peasant would punish his punishment, said, I will out of pure friendship lend thee a coat for a short time. What will people not do for love? The peasant was contented with this, but put the Jew's coat on and went off with him. The king reproached the countryman because of the evil speaking of which the Jew had informed him. Ah, said the peasant, what a Jew says is always false. No truer words ever comes from his mouth. That rascal there is capable of maintaining that I have his coat on. What is that? Shrieked the Jew. Is that coat not mine? Have I not lent it to thee out of pure friendship, in order to thou might appear before the Lord King? When the king heard that, he said, The Jew has assuredly deceived one or the other of us, either myself or the peasant, and again he ordered something to be counted out to him in hard thalers. The peasant, however, went home in the good coat, with the good money in his pocket, and said to himself, This time I have hit it. Sounds like a bunch of scamming to me. That's what I say. No worries at all, Matt. Cool stuff in the store. Excellent. Probably won't be hanging out too long over there, but excellent. Well, I really like this book. There's over 200 something stories in it, but they're all really, really short. And I don't know if I like that, so I'm going to be doing some research so that I can find out if these have bigger entries and bigger stories, because it seems very rushed. So we did it, y'all. We hit that 30 like mark. And I cannot thank you enough. Super appreciate you guys being here. I think we are going to go ahead and call it so I can get a little bit to eat and hang out with the old man before we head off for the night. But I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us on a Monday. Relax and read. And I do want to remind you all to always go out and get everything that you set out to get. Don't let anything stop you. But take $0 to be a good person, so always do it through Peace, Love, and Pokemon. I might ask one of you if you could drop Vicarious's live link. I would appreciate that, just in case. I'm not certain that my redirects are working. So, but next time we will be live will be on Thursday, y'all, and we'll be doing some more art, looking through cards, a few pack battles, and opening some mail for some pretty cool people. So look forward to that. Thank you all so much, and thank you for believing in ghosts. Love you all. Love you, brother. And yeah, we'll see you on Thursday. Thanks, y'all. Let's go Poke Ghost Raid.